Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Rangers Reviews morning briefing. It is Monday, August 12th. I'm joined by Chris, Jack and Stevie Clifford. No Derek Clark today as we talk through all the latest Rangers news as ever and react to their 2-1 win over Motherwell at the weekend. Stevie, how are you? Rangers' first win of the weekend. First win of the season at the weekend. It wasn't a good first half. Slightly forgotten by the nature of the second half, but how are you getting on?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I think there's a lot to kind of go through and discuss from it. Like you said, a really good first half, lots of positives in there that we can talk about, and then the negatives of the second. But the most important thing is 3 points. Get a wee bit of momentum going, and we're on to the next one.
And Chris, I'm sure you echo those thoughts. Listen, come full time, the first half I thought was good, and then come full time when Rangers, they weren't hanging on, but given the nature of the game, it's like, one Motherwell long throw, one mistake in the box, and it's an absolute disaster. But important that they got a win that they absolutely needed, I guess.
We spoke about that on the show post match on Saturday, of that very scenario of teams getting a free kick and throwing it on top of the goalkeeper, getting a throw in and putting it on top of the centre halves, and then Rangers not being able to deal with it, and how often we have seen that over the last few seasons. So thankfully Rangers did not fall to that particular shooting themselves in the foot curse once again. Managed to get through it, and overall you have to say they thoroughly merited the 3 points. A couple of good saves from Jack Butland in there. Slightly unfortunate with the way that the own goal ended up in the back of the net, but obviously not so much unfortunate in terms of the build up to it. And we also discussed the goals. I'm sure we'll come on to talk about Cerny and his impact as well. So I think there was a lot to like, a couple of things to be concerned about. But as you said at the top of the show, it's Rangers' first win of the season. It's onwards and upwards, hopefully, and full focus now on Tuesday night.
Yeah, absolutely right. Before we get into anything today, we want to let everyone know about our new season sale at the Rangers Review. It's only about once or twice a year that we do these types of sales. At the moment, if you're a new subscriber for the course of the next week, so that's up until, I believe, next Monday, you can get an entire year, an entire season, and more of the Rangers Review for just £12. That's £1 effectively a month for what we believe is really top quality Rangers coverage right across the board. You'll get to read Stevie's thoughts, Chris's latest news. The morning briefing obviously comes as a package with all of that, all of our analysis, all of our inside stories. And if you watch us every morning, it is the best way to support us with a subscription to the Rangers Review. And Stevie, most importantly, if people do take out a subscription, they'll be able to read your column, which is obviously, as you would say, the best piece of content on the website. No, he's muted him.
Sorry.
You can't have been that confident in your abilities.
I was just saying it's rivaled now by Chris and I's new show.
Yes, of course. Tell the masses about it.
Well, Chris and I have started a new show. It's called The Talking Point, and we started it last week. It's had a fantastic reaction. We chose to do the first one on the stadium stuff, so we'll do that, I think, bi-weekly. Chris, is the plan, and then we'll go on to maybe talk about the CEO or the squad kind of financial situation in a couple of weeks' time. So there's lots. Look, I think there's lots to discuss with it and lots we're looking forward to. But yes, the column is a weekly thing. I think there's lots, to enjoy on the platform. I think there's lots of different analysis, lots of different tactical stuff, and it's really good. So you can also get a wee 10% bonus if you use the code Clifford10 as well, just on top of that. So it's even cheaper than £12. So a lot to like about it, Joshua.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to take us up on that offer, you can click on the links in the description below. But right, let's get into the football. Rangers 2, Motherwell 1. We obviously spoke about it, Chris, you and I, a little bit after the game on Saturday. So Stevie, I'll come to you first. I would say that there's a lot of muted optimism or shoots of optimism in just reading the comment section as you're reflecting on this morning as well. Let's just start with your overall thoughts. I'm sure we'll come to Vaclav, Cerny in the second half in the defence, but how did you see the game overall? And maybe in particular that first half where it did feel like, especially compared to the Hearts game the week before, like in midweek, Rangers were playing with a lot more intensity, and because they seem to have a lot more intensity on and off the ball, that lended itself to certainly a stronger performance before the break, when they could have gone on to score a third goal in that game, and I think that would have really killed it off as a contest, and it probably merited that on the basis of play, didn't it?
Yeah, I've actually seen this before. Dick Advocaat took over in his first season, didn't get a result at Tynecastle, and then the next home game beat Motherwell 2-1 at home at Ibrox. Went on to win the treble that year. So that's what we're all expecting now, I think. So, no, I just, in all seriousness, I thought for 50 minutes, 55 minutes, we were very good, especially first half. I think Stuart Kettlewell actually referenced it in his post-match stuff. He said Rangers were playing I think the phrase he used was eye-catching football. And I thought we were very good up front. There was a lot of one-touch movement. I thought Wright, Lawrence, Dessers, Cerny all did actually pretty well in the first half before tailing off incredibly disappointingly in the second half. But first half, lots to like. A really unfortunate goal. Do you know what, Joshua? You'll be able to tell me better, but I think there's numerous things we could have done better on the goal. I think maybe we can come to that in a bit. But overall, performance-wise, I think that we were very good. Certainly first half. Second half, disappointing. I think Dessers' opportunity, which he took over the bar, and then Ross McCausland was in a couple of times on the right-hand side, which really disappointed me. Really good positioning, Joshua, really good positioning, and then he doesn't do anything with it, which was, I suppose it kind of echoes the bigger kind of criticism from the support that we just don't have an end product and things after the lights of Cerny went off. So I think there's a lot to be confident about in the first half, and just about extending that further, I think, is where I am with it.
Yeah, a few comments. Jamie saying, I feel the build-up play from the back to the middle is really promising. Once we get into the final third, it breaks up far too much. Kind of agreeing with what you're saying there, Stevie. Maka saying, morning, guys. Slowly getting there, but wouldn't it be good to keep a clean sheet for once? And Scott's Wilder saying, last two games have definitely shown shoots of improvement and a style of play, although it's nowhere near the end finished product. Chris, one of the players, I think Stevie's right to touch upon that there, because one of the players who did have an end product was Vaclav Cerny. Carl here saying he looks quality already, even though he's not fully fit. Once you start to add, style of play has been a criticism of Clement, but I think you see with Cerny, once you start to add, round pegs and round holes, players who do have the ability to improve the first team right away. You saw the uplift in what Cerny brought, not only with his goal, but also his final ball, which we saw in midweek in Lublin as well. And it was, as far as introductions go, and I think you've got to caveat this with the fact that he's just been on 4 weeks holiday and he's only trained a handful of times. I thought it was a pretty impressive home debut, even though it only lasted for about 55 minutes overall.
Did I not get the chance, like Stevie, to talk up my stuff and say how it's worth paying for and it's worth signing up for? You've taken that opportunity right from under my feet. No, on Cerny, I think we spoke about him a bit post match on Saturday, and he looks a potential answer to a problem that's been a long standing one for Rangers. And there's not been a proper, effective, creative goal scoring winger on that right hand side for a number of seasons now. There is a concern that there's not a lot of depth there. Now, Stevie mentioned Ross McCausland coming on. You look at the other options. Scott Wright has been talked about often enough, and not always in glowing terms, or really ever in glowing terms, it has to be said. I think Rangers are really short of backup. Now, you look at if Cortez is fit and if Cerny is fit, that looks two good options in those wide areas, and we then think the squad's actually getting somewhere. It's looking good. You then see the issue. Cortez obviously comes out last week, and it's right that if it goes in, doesn't take his chance. The manager spoke again post-match about putting too much emphasis, I think, on Cerny. He was asked, is he fit to start on Tuesday? And he said, that's a good question. I've got a lot to consider. I think we would all have him in our starting lineups when we do our teams later on after the presser. He's certainly going to be my option on that right-hand side. But I think, as we spoke about as a pre-match, it's hard to second-guess a Clement side because he does put so much emphasis on the loading on certain players and the minutes that they play. It's easy for us to say, pick your best team. Right now, the best team clearly includes Cerny, even though he only got 55 minutes at the weekend, it was man of the match. And Stevie mentioned Rangers being good for 50-55. I don't think it's any coincidence that Rangers looked worse when he was off the pitch because he was that effective. So he looks like, as I say, he looks a potential answer to that problem. Let's not go overboard on a really good cross on Tuesday and a good performance and a really good goal on Saturday. We do need to see a lot more from him. The manager again mentioned that post-match about how there will be more to come from him. Yeah. It's just how quickly we can get him up to that level in terms of fitness and sharpness. And once Rangers do get that, as they get Cortés back on the other side, that forward line certainly looks a bit more threatening. Because at times last season, certainly times during pre-season, you were wondering where the creativity and the goals were ever going to come from in this side.
Stevie, I'm going to put it back to you on Cerny because I know you want to make a Cerny point, but I want to give you my theory on it a little bit. So Clement has had the whole style of play question. I think there's valid points there, and we won't really know for a while. And I think it's there's an element of the unknown. I think there's been good things and concerning things as well. Chris and I were speaking about this after the game. Can't remember if it was on a podcast or not because it all blurs into one these days. But effectively, I think if you look at Chefty's impact in midweek and Cerny as well, you see that the difference when Clement has players who can play as he wants. And what I mean by that is if you look at the way that the squad was configured, and I don't just mean for a certain formation, but if you look at the way that the squad was configured under Michael Beale, the pace of playing the ball was slower. Rangers made a lot more passes. They were trying to overload spaces, a lot of narrow attackers. Whereas what Clement wants, I think, is not players who thrive in small spaces all the time or thrive playing in combination with their teammates, although that's obviously a factor, but it's players like Cerny or Chefty or Ridvan who can progress, or Sterling who can progress the ball individually, who can make use of the bigger spaces that are there in his style of play, and you see that on and off the ball for better or worse at points. Did you watching Cerny at the weekend just think it felt like a better fit, and he feels like a player who, Chris is right, we've only seen him for less than 90 minutes, but I think even though he's hardly trained, you can see the quality that he should bring, and the fact that he's just a natural right winger in a Clement system that has lacked natural wingers for the whole time he's really been at the club.
Do you know what I thought about him? The first thing I thought about him was he's obviously a very intelligent player, because he never, and something I noticed that it may sound completely ridiculous, he never really stands still. And I'll cite a wee moment that I picked up on. He was hugging the right-hand side touchline. Don't know if people remember this in the first half, but he was hugging the right-hand side touchline, realising that there was somebody close to him. John Souttar became the overload on the right-hand side and began to venture forward. So he just moved in and he took the defender with him, opened up the whole space. Souttar clipped the ball in, and I think Dessers headed it just looping over. And that, for me, showed the intelligence of Cerny, just to be able to just recognise, I can move in here, make space for my teammate. And what I liked about him was that he just looked never still, always moving about, always opening up space, always developing the game as well. So really liked that. And I thought, obviously, for his finish again, out wide, comes inside into the space, opens the ball, opens the play up. Nice touch, going in on the angle. I just thought that I don't want to go over the top and say, this is wonderful and things like that. And I just think it's very promising early start from him. Don't want to overload it and put too much pressure on Joshua, but he's certainly a promising start, and he's certainly somebody that I liked. Not seen too much of him in terms of really one-on-ones yet, taking on his opponent, but I think that individual movement and things like that has been very good.
Yeah, absolutely right. Let's talk about the goal. You brought it up there, Stevie, because for the positives, people are also talking about the negatives and the concession of that goal. Rangers really didn't concede many chances at all in the game, but it was still delicately poised, wasn't it? And I guess that it didn't look like a defence to me that's comfortable yet defending a one-goal leader or trusts itself to not concede a chance in the dying stages. If you look at the numbers, if you look at that game overall, that was never a game that Rangers should have dropped points in, but because of the own goal they conceded, that was a risk late on. Connor's here saying Tavas to get out quicker to the winger before their goal, recurring theme with him giving people too much time and space. my thoughts on the goal is this, and I'll put it to you first, Chris. The first issue, I think the first issue is that Clermont doesn't mind conceding counterattacks. As football's quite open, we've spoken about this recently, Chris. It doesn't have the kind of territorial control that you'd associate with a Beale team or a Gerrard team. So if you look at that game in midweek against Kiev, there was a lot of times where they were breaking kind of from behind the midfield in the final third. That's obviously where their goal comes from. If you look at the origin point of the goal, what happens? I actually thought it was Tavernier's fault for the initial ball into midfield, and I don't think it is, because he's got Sneddon, his man, on the outside. You've got two centre-backs there. One of them doesn't step up when the rest of the team has stepped up. So it feels like there's a bit of a breakdown in communication, because you've got the front six have all went man for man and they've all pressed and they forced the long ball, but then the defence hasn't followed them. Because if Suter just steps into midfield with his man there, the ball, that doesn't happen. Motherwell can't get the ball into midfield that quickly. However, you still look at the position that they cross it from, and what Clermont chose to focus on was how it was unlucky. There was a double touch off the defender. But there is a number of issues from there, because Tavernier probably thinks it's so far out wide and his defenders have a 2-on-1 that he's just going to allow the ball to go back in and possession be regained. So I think there's an element of hard luck about it. But Chris, that's my reading on it. The team pressed, the defence didn't press with it. Tavernier's not quick enough to get out and close it down. I don't think John Suter's in great form, and he gets the initial touch, which makes it awkward for Robin Proper. But aside from the analysis of what went wrong in that isolated moment, this is a recurring theme that you'd hope Proper would start to help and address, even though he was the one who scored the own goal, which is that defensive unit still doesn't look totally solid, and it will need to improve pretty quickly over this month, because for how good Rangers were, and as Stevie says, they weren't brilliant, but they were improved, to then go and concede goals like that really makes life more difficult for you, to put it diplomatically.
I think I said to you post-match on Saturday, it goes down as a Robin Proper own goal, but there's so many other people that have to carry their weight of responsibility in it, as you've outlined there. I think Proper is, the manager said, unlucky. He is unfortunate that when he gets that touch, it goes in the area of the goal that Jack Butland just can't get to. If it's 2 yards further closer to the keeper, it's saved, and then we're not talking about it. We're still talking about Rangers being too easy to play against for Motherwell to get into that position, but you're then not compounding that mistake with conceding the own goal, and that then also leads into that fraught last 10-15 minutes that we spoke about earlier on. So Proper, yes, he's at fault, but not wholly to blame by any manner of means. Other players, as you said, they certainly have to take their share of the responsibility. You mentioned John Suter. I think he's become not quite the new target for the support, but I think there's a lot of questions being asked about Suter's form, a lot of questions about his place in the team. And as much as it's a bonus that Proper has come in, he should be an improvement. He should be one of the first names on the team sheet. There's still this debate of, well, who starts alongside him when you're picking your team for Tuesday night. Do you have any real 100% conviction in either of the three options that are there? I wouldn't be surprised if Balogun gets the shout. I think people have spoken enough about Ben Davies. I think we know that he's not someone who completely convinces. So John Suter, I thought he was okay last season. Good to see him play the number of games that he did, but we know there's a mistake in him. We know that there's these moments that could cost Rangers, certainly against a higher calibre of opposition. So that's, for me, that's a concern. Proper is a good acquisition. He looks a good acquisition, but that doesn't mean to say that one player suddenly solves all the defensive issues that this Rangers side still have.
Yeah, and Stevie, I guess on the goal that, okay, the ball gets into the final third too easily. There was a moment in the second half, just before Proper was taken off, where he was in a similar position, maybe a bit closer to goal, but he was in a similar position to Tavernier, and he just cut the cross out. And do you think it's as simple as that on the other side of things, that Tavernier's form is, again, well, especially since March, there's been a lot of criticism around that. He obviously created the second goal for Cerny, played that pass in, and was involved in the lead up to the first as well. But it's just these soft defensive moments that you can't really afford. For example, if Rangers are going to make it into the Champions League group stage, defensive mistakes like that, if they're to get into the next round, it can't happen, can they?
Wouldn't have thought so, Joshua. Am I allowed to say this? I think what you said there is correct. I also think James Tavernier is a wee bit lazy. Right, that's the God's honest truth. I think it's a wee bit lazy from him because I think, like you, he's overconfident that he can just allow the ball to be swung in and the defensive boys in the middle are going to pick that up. And I think there's a degree of overconfidence in him just allowing that to happen. So I think that's the first thing. And because it doesn't look great, he then becomes the one that's at fault for it in the eyes of the supporter because it's such an obvious kind of reaction to have. But I'm with you, and this is the trouble I've had, and you'll be able to tell me better why this is happening. Maybe you have explained it slightly when you say that Suter doesn't step up in that. See this ball that keeps happening, this one ball, and the person's finding space in between the defence and the midfield deep because the two and Barrie and Diamande are pushed up onto their players. We need to stop that. It happened against Manchester United numerous times. Onana done it. It happened in Birmingham, and it seems to be a set-up issue. And if they're not getting that, that's a real worry for me because if that becomes noticeable, and if it's noticeable to somebody like me, then opposition managers are going to be watching that and thinking they can pick up on it. So that's a big problem defensively for me, Josh, what I've got. And I think that John Suter, who Chris was discussing there, I think you're right. He looks really low and confident, especially with balls in the air, which is a real weird thing for him. He looks to be getting caught under things quite a number of times. So, yeah, defensively, we aren't in great shape at this moment. I don't know if it needs tweaked. I don't know if maybe Balogun coming in. But Balogun came in at the weekend for the last 15 minutes, didn't he? Defended really well, but couldn't find a pass. So, he seemed to just, forget that we were in blue. But defended really well, really good for the long throws in the air and stuff. So it's a bit of a toss-up at the moment of who you would go with, I think. But Balogun, I think I'm with Chris. I think Balogun maybe gets the nod for me during tomorrow's game. I thought Proper looked okay. I thought Proper did well. Goal-wise, though, I think because Tavernier looks half-hearted, doesn't it? Whether that's correct or not, it looks half-hearted. He looks like he jogs out. Looks like it's a soft effort. And I think that's why people pick up on it. I think he's maybe entitled to think that they'll clear it behind him. But I think everybody's shaped wrong. Suter's not shaped properly, is he? And then Proper's not shaped properly either to deal with it. So just I think it took them by surprise because they weren't slightly on their toes ready for it the way they maybe should have been. I'm trying to think of a word, but I can't think of it. But they were just overconfident that nothing was going to come from it. And I think that cost complacent.
Yeah. Complacent. There you go.
That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm trying to. I think Tavernier goes out complacently thinking it'll be dealt with, and I think the shape of the defenders is the same. But that one ball, that's a big issue for me because we constantly are getting caught out with it.
I think you're right, Stevie. Yeah. One thing that I think you saw from Robin Proper's 60, 70 minutes or so, and again, clearly not going to be his best performance in a Rangers jersey yet, but he was more comfortable stepping up into midfield, wasn't he, off the ball? I think that's one thing that if you compare him to Goldson, again talking about the bigger spaces that players maybe need to defend and attack on an individual basis under Clement. If you've got two centre backs that are confident doing that, then I think that ball through midfield starts to become less of an issue because when you do go up man for man, both of your centre backs are happy to leave the safety of the back four, if you will. Chris, a couple more comments we'll get to. Showing up, friend of the show, saying Conor Barron is going to be a cracking player. I thought he's been someone who's very quickly settled in at Rangers, clearly, as you can see from the number of games he's played, and he's had to as well because there's been no one else in that position. Graham also saying that Raskin's going to have a hell of a job, in his words, to get back in ahead of Barron into that Rangers team. Philippe Clement was speaking about him after in pretty glowing terms, I think, for Philippe Clement, who doesn't always single out players. But Barron, I thought, next to Diamande, we know Rangers need depth in there. They're still looking for another player. They need, I think, a number 6 profile, which they're still looking for to allow Diamande to play higher, to not put that burden totally on Conor Barron. But he has adapted very quickly, hasn't he? And again, as we referenced after the game on Saturday, he looks like someone who can take responsibility, which is such a big part of playing for Rangers, especially in an area like the midfield.
I think it was last week I mentioned this on the show when I had I spoke to Kevin Thompson a few weeks ago to do a piece on Conor. I also had him at Kelty Hearts, called in a favour from Aberdeen, got him down to Kelty for the first half of the season. And he spoke a lot about his quality and what he will bring. He spoke a lot about his mentality in terms of what he will think going into Rangers. And I referenced it back to when he made that same move, or not that same move, but the move from Hibs. He thought, going to Rangers, that's my jersey, that's my place. I'm going to go there, earn it, and keep it. And Conor Barron seems to have had that same mentality. He's not thought, well, Rangers is a big club and it's a big move from me, and it'll take 6 months to settle in. And if I play here, there, and everywhere, then it'll be good. It's a good experience. He's clearly come in thinking, there's a midfield jersey that's up for grabs here, looking at the other options, thinking, I'm probably better than them. Manager's got faith in me. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to play. He's hit the ground running. He's did everything that it has to have done. When you look at some of the other players that have been signed over the course of the window, nowhere near ready to come in and have the type of impact that Conor Barron has had. They needed someone like him just to come in and say, I'm a Rangers player, this is my spot, go and give me the ball, I'm going to go and start doing things in games. So I think it's really encouraging. If Rangers had a couple more like him over the next few weeks at the window, guys who are just ready to come in and go straight into that side, it would make such a big difference. Again, I think as we touched on with Cerny earlier on, let's not go too overboard on the hype. Let's not build him into something that he's not. There's clearly still areas of improvement within his game, but I think we have to be encouraged by how well he has settled. I do like that partnership with Diomande. Having said that, ironically, I would break it up on Tuesday night. I would move Diomande up one if we're going to play in with that number 10. I'd move Diomande into that role and have Barron and Dujon Sterling as the two. I think that gives Rangers the best chance on Tuesday night, and potentially the best chance until reinforcements arrive, until more players are brought into that area of the squad. I think that's probably the three that I would go with. Might not see it that often. We know the manager likes Tom Lawrence and has put him in a number of times already. But Barron, I think, been really good. You have to give him credit for that. I say hopefully, like so many of them, it's just a start, and there's a lot more to come.
Stevie, is that the midfield three, the one that ended the game against Motherwell? Is that the three you'd start with against Kyiv tomorrow night?
Yeah, and I didn't think Diomande had a great game on Saturday. I thought at times he was slack on the ball, although he was involved in a lot of good stuff. I would be tempted, like Chris said, to go with that midfield three. I think the only other position is up for grabs for me is the left-hand side. I'm really surprised. I think this is worth saying. A couple of things surprised me from Saturday with Clement. One, that Hefty didn't come on for at least 20 minutes on that left-hand side. I know Rabbi Matondo did, and understand it, that's fine. But I'm really surprised Hefty didn't build on what he did in midweek, and I'm also very surprised Danilo didn't get any minutes, because Dessers... Listen, I thought Dessers did well on Saturday again, and I'm not going to go over the top with praise or criticism of him. I thought he did fine, scored a goal. But at that point where he runs through and balloons it over the bar, I think I'm looking at him thinking the big guy looks knackered, and he just plays 90 all the time.
Yeah,
I think it was an ideal opportunity there for at least 10 minutes for Danilo. So that's two big things on Saturday that surprised me from the manager. No Hefty and no Danilo. But I think that midfield that Chris talks about, absolutely, I'd play Hefty on Wednesday from the start on the left-hand side. And the only other thing I would possibly change is Suter in the back line. But to be honest, I'm not sure he'll do that with John Suter. I'm just hoping that it doesn't take a really glaring mistake for him then to have to come out, because that would be my worry. If that then happened and then you take him out, how long does it take you to build him back up, to put him back in, etc.? So Balogun might just be the best option for that. But there's a couple of contentious ones. Cerny for me definitely comes in and starts. But yeah, to go back to your question, I think Chris is right. It's a midfield that has been talked about on my own podcast quite a while, and I think definitely that's one that people would like to see.
Absolutely right. We're going to leave it there. A reminder to everyone, you can subscribe to the Rangers Review at the moment, just £12 for an entire year. All the relevant links for that are in the description. Hurry, because it doesn't last for long. We will be back later on with all your press conference coverage ahead of the match tomorrow, so stay up to date with us across all our socials. Thank you for joining us. Have a great Monday, and we'll speak